The Sopwith 1.5 Strutter was a British single- or two-seat multi-role biplane aircraft of the First World War. It was significant as the first British two-seat tractor fighter and the first British aircraft to enter service with a synchronised machine gun. It was given the name 1.5 Strutter because of the long and short cabane struts that supported the top wing. As well as serving with both British Air Services, it also saw widespread but lackluster service with the French Aéronautique Militaire. Design and development. In December 1914, the Sopwith Aviation Company designed a small, two-seat biplane powered by an 80-horsepower gnome rotary engine, which became known as the Sigrist bus after Fred Sigrist, Sopwith's works manager. The Sigrist bus first flew on the 5th of June 1915, and although it set a new British altitude record on the day of its first flight, only one was built. Serving as a company runabout, the Sigrist bus formed the basis for a new, larger, fighter aircraft, the Sopwith LCT, designed by Herbert Smith and powered by a 110-horsepower Lackluster engine. Like the Sigrist bus, each of the upper wings was connected to the fuselage by a pair of short struts and a pair of longer struts, forming a W when viewed from the front, this giving rise to the aircraft's popular nickname of the 1.5 Strutter. The first prototype was ready in mid-December 1915, undergoing official testing in January 1916. The 1.5 Strutter was of conventional wire-braced wood and fabric construction. The pilot and gunner sat in widely separated tandem cockpits, with the pilot sitting in front, giving the gunner a good field of fire for his Lewis gun. The aircraft had a variable incidence tailplane that could be adjusted by the pilot in flight, and air brakes under the lower wings to reduce landing distance. The Vickers Challenger synchronization gear was put into production for the Royal Flying Corps in December 1915, and in a few weeks, a similar order for the Skarf-Dybowski gear was placed for the RNAS. Early production 1.5 Strutters were fitted with one or the other of these gears for the pilot's fixed 303 in Vickers machine gun. Due to a shortage of the new gears, some early aircraft were built with only the observer's gun. Later aircraft were either fitted with the Ross or the Sopwith Cowper gears. None of these early mechanical synchronization gears were very reliable, and it was not uncommon for propellers to be damaged, or even entirely shot away. The scarf ring mounting was also new, and production was at first slower than that of the aircraft, requiring them. Various makeshift Lewis mountings as well as the older Newport ring mounting were fitted to some early 1.5 Strutters as an interim measure. The two-seaters could carry 4 25-pound bombs under wing, which could be replaced by 2 65-pound bombs for anti-submarine patrols. For the beginning, a dedicated light bomber version was planned, with the observer's cockpit eliminated to allow more fuel and bombs to be carried in the manner of the Martinsyde Elephant and the B.E.12, with an internal bomb bay capable of carrying 4 65-pound bombs. Operational history. In British service, the prototype two-seater flew in December 1915, and production deliveries started to reach the RNAS in February 1916. By the end of April, no. 5-wing RNAS had a complete flight equipped with the new aircraft. The Sopwiths were used both for escorting the wing's Quadron G4 and Breguet bombers and for carrying out bombing raids themselves. The War Office had ordered the type for the RFC in March, but because Sopwith's entire production capacity was pre-contracted to the Navy, the RFC orders had to be placed with Ruston, Proctor and Vickers, and production from these manufacturers did not get into its stride until August. Since the bomb offensive was planned for the end of June, and with the RFC having a shortage of up-to-date aircraft to support the planned offensive, it was agreed that a number of Sopwiths would be transferred from one service to the other, allowing No. 70 Squadron to reach the front by early July 1916, with Sopwith-built Strutters originally intended for the Navy. At first No. 70 did very well with the new aircraft. The period of German ascendancy known as the Fokker scourge was over, and the 1.5 Strutter's long range, coupled with its excellent armament for the period, enabled effective offensive patrolling deep into German-held territory. However, by the time No. 45 Squadron reached the front in October, the new Albatros fighters were appearing in the Jagdstaffeln. By January 1917, when No. 43 Squadron arrived in France, the type was outclassed as a fighter, while the fitting of a more powerful 130 horsepower Leclerc 9B improved performance slightly. This came too late to reverse the situation. It was still a useful long-range reconnaissance aircraft when it could be provided with adequate fighter escort, but was one of the types to suffer severely during Bloody April. No. 43 Squadron alone suffering 35 casualties from an officer establishment of 32. Like other early Sopwith types, the 1.5 Strutter was very lightly built, and its structure did not stand up very well to arduous war service. It was also far too stable to make a good dogfighter, and a distance between the pilot and the observer's cockpit impeded communication between them. The last operational 1.5 Strutters in the RFC were replaced by Sopwith Camels in late October 1917. The type's long range and stability were good qualities for a home defense fighter, and it served with 3 home defense squadrons, No. 37, No. 44 and No. 78 squadrons. Most of the 1.5 Strutters supplied to home defense units had been built as two-seaters, but many were converted in the field to single-seaters to improve performance. Some of these single-seaters were similar to the bomber variant, but others were of different type, known as the Sopwith Comic. The cockpit was moved back behind the wings, and 1 or 2 Lewis guns, either mounted on Foster mountings or fixed to fire upwards, outside the arc of the propeller, replaced the synchronized Vickers. The RNAS used most of the 1.5 Strutters as bombers and as shipboard aircraft. In this service it was known as the ship's strut and flew from aircraft carriers and other warships of the Royal Navy, as well as from HMAS Australia. The RNAS and the RFC used the type as a trainer after it had been withdrawn from operational service, and like the Sopwith Pup, it proved a popular personal aircraft for senior officers. In French service, the largest user of the Sopwith was the French Aéronautique Militaire. By May 1916, it was obvious that the Pusher-Farman and Breguet bombers and reconnaissance aircraft were obsolete, and with the failure of the tractor aircraft replacements, particularly the Nieuport 14, something was needed to fill the gap. In response, the Sopwith was ordered in large numbers from French manufacturers in 3 versions: the Sop 1A2, Sop 1B2 and Sop 1B1. While in French service, they equipped the large portion of the French bomber and artillery spotting squadrons and carried out many bombing attacks against industrial and military targets, including against the German front lines. It was not as successful against fighters, suffering substantial casualties and downing fewer enemy aircraft than either the aircraft used before it or after, with the belated introduction of the Breguet 14A2 and B. II. The last of the Sopwiths were finally withdrawn from operational service in early 1918, although they would continue in service with training units until after the end of the war. In other foreign service, 3 Belgian squadrons also flew French-built Sopwiths, and surplus French Sopwiths were used by several countries post-war. During the war, several 1.5 Strutters that were interned after landing in the Netherlands were purchased for the Dutch Luchtvaartafdeling. Over 100 1.5 Strutters were also built in Russia by Dux and Lebedev, supplemented by large numbers delivered directly from Britain and France. The 1.5 Strutter remained in large-scale use by both the Soviet forces and White Russians during the Russian Civil War and Polish-Soviet War. 3 were captured during this war and used by the Poles in 1919–1920. Other captured ones were used by Baltic states. The American Expeditionary Force purchased 384 two-seat Strutter observation aircraft and 130 single-seat bombers from France in 1917–18. While mainly used for training, they were used operationally by the 90th Aero Squadron as an interim measure due to a shortage of later types. The U.S. Navy used a number of the two-seat Sopwiths, along with Newport 28s and Henriette HD. 1S and 2S ships aircraft in the early post-war years, testing the use of aircraft from platforms mounted on the turrets of battleships. The 1.5 Strutter also served with the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force, some examples serving in the Japanese Expeditionary Force in Siberia during 1918. Around 1,500 1.5 Strutters were built for the Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Naval Air Service, and between 4,200 and 4,500 were built in France. Variants and designations: Sopwith Landclergy Tract of Sopwith Company designation, Admiralty designation for two-seater, number from serial of last aircraft in first batch ordered, Admiralty designation for single-seater bomber, number likewise assigned, Sopwith two-seater RFC designation, Sopwith 1.5 Strutter, unofficial name due to configuration of struts, also used by U.S. Navy. Sopwith Comic Single-Seat Home Defense Fighter Ship Strutter Shipboard version, Sop French-built version, Sop 1 2 two-seat reconnaissance aircraft, Sop 1B1 single-seat bomber, Sop 1B Liore Olivier license-built version, Japanese license-built bomber version, Japanese license-built Leo 1 reconnaissance version. Survivors. Original Sopwith 1.5 Strutter aircraft are preserved at the following locations: Belgium S85 Koninklijke Leger Museum, Musée Royal de l'Armée, Brussels, France. Number 556, Sop 1 at Musée de l'Aéronautique Paris Le Bourget Airport, France. Number 2897, Sop 1B2 at the Association Memorial Flight La Ferté-Alais near Paris, New Zealand. Former Argentinian machine formerly in the possession of Kermit Week's Fantasy of Flight Museum at Polk City, Florida is under restoration with Peter Jackson's firm, the Vintage Aviator Limited in New Zealand. A number of reproductions of this popular machine now exist. Visitors to the Scottish National Museum of Flight in April-May 2013 can see a Sopwith 1.5 Strutter being built in the Concorde hangar. This machine differs from originals in being powered by a radial engine instead of a rotary. Operators. Military Afghanistan Air Force received a single aircraft from the Soviet Union in September 1921, which remained in existence until at least December 1924. Australia. Australian Flying Corps No. 2 Squadron AFC operated one aircraft for training only. Number 4 Squadron AFC used strutters for training. Number 6 Squadron AFC in the United Kingdom. Belgium Aviation Militaire Belge 2 EME Escadrille 3 EME Escadrille 4 EME Escadrille 6 EME Escadrille. Brazil Escola de Aviação Militar used 3 aircraft for liaison and army cooperation duties. Estonia. Estonian Air Force operated a single ex-Soviet aircraft. France Aéronautique Militaire, a total of 72 escadrilles equipped either wholly or partly. Aéronautique Navale. Greece Hellenic Navy, 6 aircraft used in the Asia Minor campaign against Turkey, 1918-21. Japan Imperial Japanese Army Air Service. Latvia. Latvian Air Force operated 4 ex-Soviet aircraft. Ajagi. Lithuania. Lithuanian Air Force operated a single ex-Soviet aircraft that landed behind Lithuanian lines during the Lithuanian-Soviet War. 2 others may also have been operated. Mexico Armada Aviation Militar operated one example from C-1920-1924. Netherlands Luchtvaartafdeling used 5 1.5 strutters that forced landed in neutral the Netherlands and were interned and subsequently purchased. Poland. Polish Air Force operated 3 aircraft captured from the Soviets in 1919-1920. Romania Royal Romanian Air Force. Russia Imperial Russian Air Force and White Russian Forces. Soviet Union Soviet Air Force. Ukraine a single aircraft acquired from Russia in 1918. United Kingdom Royal Flying Corps No. 37 Squadron RFC, Number 39 Squadron RFC, Number 43 Squadron RFC, Number 44 Squadron RFC, Number 45 Squadron RFC, Number 46 Squadron RFC, Number 70 Squadron RFC, Number 78 Squadron RFC, Number 143 Squadron RFC. Royal Naval Air Service No. 2 Squadron, Number 5 Squadron, Number 8 Squadron, United States Aviation Section, U.S. Signal Corps, United States Army Air Service 88th Aero Squadron 90th Aero Squadron, 99th Aero Squadron, United States Navy, Civil Argentina 2 aircraft registered in 1928, R-105 and R-106. One of these 2 preserved in Florida. France 55 aircraft on French Civil Register in 1922. Japan at least 7 aircraft registered. Sweden possibly 1 aircraft from Switzerland in 1926. Switzerland 2 aircraft, CH-53 registered the 9th of April 1921, cancelled the 9th of October 1923. CH-67 registered the 5th of December 1923, cancelled December 1926 as sold to Sweden. United Kingdom 1 civil registered aircraft, GEAVB. Specifications. General characteristics: crew 2, pilot and observer, length 25 feet 3 in, wingspan 33 feet 6 in, height 10 feet 3 in. Wing area 346 feet squared. Empty weight 1,305 pounds. Loaded weight 2,149 pounds. Max takeoff weight 2,150 pounds. Power plant 1 times Clerget 9B rotary engine, 130 horsepower. Performance maximum speed 100 miles per hour at 6,500 feet. Endurance 3 3/4 hours. Service ceiling 15,500 feet. Climb to 6,500 feet 9 minutes 10s. Armament guns, 1 times. 303 in forward-firing synchronized Vickers machine gun, 1 times. 303 in Lewis gun in observer's cockpit. Bombs, up to 130 pounds bombs.